You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Welcome to the microphone, Supreme Court Judge David Ashton Lewis.
Good morning, Colin. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well, and I want to say good morning to a couple of really nice people. I know we don't normally name people here, but I want to say to Lynn, St George, and to the three ladies at Metro Coaches. I've had the pleasure of knowing Lynn and meeting these women at Metro Coaches. I say good morning to you because the work that you do in this community is just stellar. So thank you.
All right. Well, they are great. We've got a great topic today. And it's accepting no, David. This is one of the ones you put forward in the list. And it is a good one. I must admit, I thought to myself, then, you know what, having spent a few weeks listening to people, accepting no is something that can be difficult for some.
Well, let me bring out two aspects. How many of you listening here, and you be honest with yourself, really like and can accept hearing no? Most people can't, but how many of you, the many of you who are Christians, sometimes God answers prayer by saying no. That's the answer.
Yes.
Now, I've met good Christians who say, no, I will accept that, and they do, but find it hard in this material world to accept no. Colin, do you accept no well?
Look, I don't mind a debate every now and again if I think I'm in the right, but when I'm completely wrong, I'll put my hand up and say, my bad. Yes, absolutely right.
Well, I think because I'm biased, because I know you and you're an honourable, honest and decent man. And so are 99% of other people, the people listening here. But ask yourself, really, how well do I accept no? Because no means you are not going to get what you want. You are wrong in many instances. Now, how many of us accept that we are wrong? And the harder it gets, the higher up in work that you do. How do you think a judge feels when he or she has put hours of work into a 100-page, 150-page judgment, and three other judges come along in a court of appeal and say very politely, no.
Look, it happens in everyday life. A good example is from 4CRB. We have plenty of people with some fantastic ideas that walk through the door for the station. And look, it comes down to a measure of logistics in most cases for us. We have a team of volunteers. Some of them are computer literate, some of them are not. And there's basically 3 or 4 of us here who shoulder the burden of a lot of the governance. So when these great ideas walk through the door, you think to yourself, that's a great idea. But then the next measure kicks in, and that is financial measure as well as a logistical measure.
How do we do it?
And again, we're short of boots on the ground. The shame of it is often we say no, or we do a modification of that idea to meet our logistical challenges or our financial challenges, and sometimes that's not taken well.
No.
One of the funny things is that I think it was Hilton Redding who mentioned it first, was that a suggestion initially becomes a demand when someone gets very upset that their suggestion wasn't taken.
Yes, I mean, you see that in the law all the time.
Yes.
You see it all the time. So no is a really difficult thing for the human condition to work through and ultimately accept. But yet I say to every one of the listeners here, you have all handled, in virtually every case, no's well. You may not have liked it, you may not have agreed. And for those of you who are now grandparents and great-grandparents, think back to when your children were doing things and you had to say no. And I think of this woman I said good morning to today because I know a bit of her history. And she had to raise 2 girls and a boy on her own, And she said to me once, when they were, I don't know, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, in their teen years, one child was extremely obedient. She said, I never had to say no to that child. She was good. She did everything basically right. The son and the older child, the older daughter, she had to watch like hawks and had to say no on many occasions. Now again, I did say to her, so how have they all turned out? And she said they've all turned out to be model and good parents and citizens of the Commonwealth of Australia.
Look, there's some interesting thinking and interesting reading on this side of the fence, and it reminded me of my early days at university. And you've got to be able to accept no, being used in to say you can't do that, and you've got to be able to use the word no.
Yes,
and
that's a good point you make.
Yes, and one of the comments was that in progressive parenting, the term we don't use no in our household. We use diverting of attention or an explanation of why we can't do that. And one of the comments in this class was, well, if you've never heard the word no, how do you learn how to use it or even deal with the ramifications of it?
Well, when you go out into life, and I heard a brilliant speech by Steve Jobs to a bunch of high school, that is year 12 graduating students. And he hit them and said, how you feel about something is irrelevant. If you have not suffered setback, if you have not suffered no, he mentions that, you will flounder in the world, you will struggle, you will never have a job, because those parents who say, oh, we divert attention, well, that's fine in your home, but your child you're raising will go out into the world.
When no is a reality.
No is a reality, and kindness is a reality. Cruelty is a reality. If you've sought to shield your brood from all that, and the problem with woke and leftism is it seeks on good grounds to do that, but it fails to take into account that we are one little microcosm in the supernova of life.
Yes.
And my child is going to have to be trained to deal with life, to deal with, the other one I used to love, no one loses here. Everyone gets a medal. Everyone and it's called participation. Well, what are they going to do when they apply for a job and keep getting no's?
Yes.
And see other people in the workplace they're in really progressing, because they are simply better at the job. My 33-year-old son is going through, he has spent 4 years, he decided he would live in Australia while applying for jobs because it's a much better place to live, better facilities, particularly the Gold Coast. Now he has a interview tomorrow, or at just after midnight tonight, with the American space maker, fighter jet maker, Northrop Grumman.
Yes.
And he's got now a Zoom meeting with a couple of senior people there. And he naturally has said to me, well, Dad, how do I handle it? And I said, his name is Somerset. You be Somerset. If you be yourself, you either won't get the job, so what? You've had something like 330 rejections,
yes,
or not even answering, but he still plies ahead. He's got a degree.
It means you're getting closer to a yes, doesn't it?
I think so. I think you're dead right, Colin. And he's got a degree. He's got a master's degree in his field, and he's now doing a postgraduate diploma in cyber stealing and that, because he thinks that might
cyber security. Yes.
Now he's also got another one on Monday with a place in North Carolina. He's had 3 interviews with them, and they've asked him would he be willing. They will fly him to, I think, Wilmington is the place. Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina, just And I said, look, I think you've got the job. What they want to do is just have a look at you.
Yes.
And he said, no, I will go. His preference is to do, he said, I can't choose. They're both good jobs and they're both well paid. So he has had to put up with over 370 odd no's. Has it daunted him? No.
Yes.
Has it stopped him? No. And I would say to him, what you just said, the more no's you get, you're heading closer to a yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's in every aspect of our life. It's through childhood, as you say. No, don't do that. No, you can't play with that. No, it's not time for lunch or dinner or whatever it may be. And all through our life, we have to deal with it. And you even look at the bigger table, and we've got Trump and Zelensky and half of Europe turning up to negotiate, and I'm sure there'll be quite a few no's right there.
Oh, I think so. And I think, you know, Trump, just to me, is the Neville Chamberlain of the 2020s. He is trying to appease Putin and put pressure on the smaller party, just accept it. And that's what, and the fact that he's even there, because in the 30s, British Prime Minister met with Hitler to discuss the future of Czechoslovakia. The Czech Prime Minister wasn't there. Now, up until this one, Zelensky hasn't been included, and he takes a briefing from Trump. So I hope Vladimir Zelensky has a really good grip on the word no.
Yes. Look, it's going to be interesting. I just find Trump seems to want to turn upside down paradigms that have been in place for a long period of time.
Very good point.
And there were reasons for them to be there in the first place.
Yes.
Maybe there's reasons to dismantle them now, but that can't be just a wave of a magic wand.
No.
That has to be careful consideration that we haven't got a wolf in sheep's clothing saying, yes, I'm more than happy to play nicely in the sandpit with everybody.
Yes.
And then when we get our way, we're not.
Well, Adolf Hitler was the classic example of that. And then when Second World War broke out, he didn't even need to play in the sandpit. He played in the big sandpit and he paid the price for it.
Yes.
And so I hope that our leaders have a good understanding of history, which I can tell you they don't, and that I'm proud of our Prime Minister when Benjamin Netanyahu made strong comment about him, and I can understand the Jewish leader saying that. I saw today there are 57 countries that are basically and believe or are based on the Judeo-Christian principles in the planet. There are 57 countries that are Muslim, and there is one country that is Jewish. And it appears that the majority of the Judeo-Christian countries are now siding with the Muslim side of life and no doubt subtly putting pressure on the Israelis. Now, I think to their credit, they are saying no.
Yes, and so they should. I mean, at the end of the day, they've been punished ever since they have occupied that land, and whether that's rightly or wrongly, that's not for us to decide. But the Islamic countries surrounding it do not like them there. They took the Golan Heights because they were being shelled. The people were dying because they were just lobbing shells in from the Golan Heights and saying, there you go, cop that one.
On their kibbutzes.
So to me, this needs to be peaceful. But if you're going to poke the bear, we're going to poke back.
Yeah, I think so. And so that you think of it, the Arab countries had a war in 1948 and lost, had a war in 1956 and lost, had a war in 1967 and lost, had a war in 1973 and lost, and then had lesser actions from 1983 up into the 90s, and they lost. So when will these Arab states realise that the word for them is no.
Agreed. And look, long-held feuds, long-held grievances, and we see them still today between the French and the English.
Yes.
If you're mistaken travelling through France as an Englishman, you're not treated too well. In fact, you could be quite rudely. So, there's those petty jealousies or those petty issues
that are hundreds of years old.
Correct. And it should be, and you've got to say that that's not genetic memory. This is passed on from family member to family member as you grow up.
Oh, it is.
And that's where the line can be severed.
Well, the good thing is, I learnt very quickly the 2 times I've been in France, and I was told by a Frenchman when I said, "Je suis un homme d'Australie," I am an Australian man, and he said, "Make sure that because you have an English name, make sure that you let every French place you know, I'm an Australian, I'm not English." And I did to a certain extent, and I was treated really well. And that stemmed back to Australian soldiers on the Western Front in the First World War. Well, we had, I think, about 340,000 Australians on the Western Front. The British had over 1 million, and they helped free France.
Yes, indeed.
So I think it's the balanced person who hates no but will accept it. What we have is a problem of those who put religion or put historical grievance in front of everything. You think we've said it on this show before many times, and the Israelis said it. It was Benjamin Netanyahu that said it. If an Arab nation puts down its arms against us, there will be peace and accord. Well, we saw it when the Israelis under Golda Meir gave back, and Anwar Sadat gave back the Sinai, pulled out of the Gaza. And Egypt and Israel have a non-aggression treaty now. So Egypt, unless it wants to become a pariah in the world, has made a commitment never go to war against Israel again. And so they have peace. And Netanyahu said, and that will happen with every nation that puts down its arms, we will put ours down. But if we put ours down first,
yes,
we will no longer exist. And I see that Hamas has come out during the week and said, we will never renounce violence against Israel. We will never renounce the saying from the river to the sea. Now that is a euphemism for what the Nazis did to the Jews in Europe.
Yeah, genocide. Exterminate them. Look, I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary, and then I want to move into, because you weren't here last week, and move into the event. We were going to discuss, dedicate a little bit of the show to the victory in the Pacific Day. It was it was the anniversary of that.
August the 15th was the
correct
anniversary.
So it's always good to remember. It's always good to go back and learn those lessons once again if we can, or
can I stop
revise those lessons.
Sad though, how many Australians over the age of 45 can tell you what VJ Day was, what the date of it was, and what it meant after 3.5 years fighting the Japanese as an enemy.
Yes, that's right.
They don't know.
Not anymore. So the shame of it is history was something that we were all taught. I must admit, in the last couple of years it became an elective, and I believe it is still to this day. I didn't become a history fan or a buff until my later years, and that's just through education as well as reading.
Well, interest. You're quite amazing, really, because I've always seen there are 3 types of people. There are commercial people, humanitarian people, and scientific people. Now, you really fit into that scientific mold because you were good at maths, physics, chemistry. You pursued science-based learning or mathematical, physics, chemistry-based learning. Now, you're as well aware as I am, there are some people who just can't do it. And they either go into commercial-based people, or people who tend to study business, accounting. And then humanitarians are people who study history, philosophy, law.
And that it's very interesting how they all go hand in hand.
Yes,
as
they
much
do.
as it's very logical thinking through science and mathematics.
Yeah.
Again, understanding how we got to these the point we are in the world is through the historical components, the learnings of Aristotle and,
Oh, yes.
and Copernicus and Galileo
Yes.
and all of these giants of the past.
And you think of it, Copernicus and Galileo were like you. They were men in the Middle Ages who were interested in science. You know, what's the answer for this? Whereas Aristotle was interested also in, what is the answer for this, but on the abstract plane? Why do men do what they do? Anyway, VJ Day. What an important day.
Very much so. How many, again, it eludes me how many people were killed in the conflict from 39 to 45. But
About 76 million.
and there is the number right there. And that is the lesson we need to consider going backwards. What brought that on? What failings led to the rise of Adolf Hitler?
Okay, stop. I can tell you. What we're just talking about now, Hitler he knew history, but he was biased in it. And he thought all of history was slanted against the German people and the German-speaking people. And I remind the listener, he wasn't even a German. And Austrians then, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire was far bigger than the German Empire, and he wasn't even a German, he was an Austrian. But he had this warped idea, Austrians are Germans. It's just the Ostmark, the southern part of Germany. So it's the same thing.
It is. 76 million people died. And again, some people will say to us, well, we must stand up to China, we must stand up to Putin. Absolutely we must. But we don't ever want to get to a stage or make decisions that lead us to a stage where we're
locked into war.
Correct.
So what we really have to do, and this is what Britain and France really did in a different way. We have to wait for you to attack us, Mr. Xi Jinping. You have to start threatening the continent of Australia and Australians, just like the Japanese. We will fight, but they bombed Pearl Harbor. And then 2 months later, they bombed Darwin. And they dropped more bombs on Darwin than they dropped in Pearl Harbor. That was a pretty clear statement to Australians and Americans. We've got a rather dangerous foe, a group who are a foe and we must deal with. Now, so far, the Chinese have been niggly and annoying, tracking ships through the Taiwan Straits, getting Chinese fighters to fly really dangerously close to Australian air surveillance aircraft who are in international airspace. But how much can you believe that? We're not always the good guys, and sometimes someone might say to Squadron Leader Belevsky, just veer off course a bit and put your great electronics onto what's happening in southern China. I'm sure we do it. I know that we do it.
And it has been done in the past. The Americans have been guilty of it, and then it led to, unfortunately, the shooting down of a commercial airline by the Russians in the 80s, I think it was.
It was, 1988, I think.
So we're all guilty of these kind of things. I think it's moreover watching and learning the mistakes of the past or the lessons of the past, the lead up to these type of things. And again, I think with some countries being a little stronger in the early days in 37, 38, 39 with Adolf Hitler, maybe it wouldn't have led to 76 million people dying.
I agree.
So
you can look back and say, we now know from captured German documents when the Nazis fell and surrendered, that had the British and the French been far more forthright and threatening as early as 1936, Hitler would never have kept going forward. But we didn't, because we were trying to be peacemakers. And the danger is when you try to be peacemakers too much, it's good with people who say, oh, well, look at the effort, we should join that. But when you meet people like Mr. Putin, who just really seems to say, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, I'll take more. I'm not sure about Xi Jinping. I mean, he leads a country of over 1 billion people. And while he wants to throw his weight around, he must realize that the West can inflict such untold damage on China,
Yes.
on mainland China. Do you want to inflict that upon your people? Because you only do what Hitler did when you think you can do it worse. I'm just finished reading a really good analysis of German intelligence and German view with the Battle of Britain. And that was to control the airspace over England to make sure they could invade England. Well, after 4 months of fighting from July to end of October, the German government realised they could not obtain aerial superiority over that island 25 miles off the coast of Europe. That then frightened them to say, well, if we haven't got air superiority, our navy is in danger and our army will not survive.
Well, it's always good to mark the days, Battle of Britain, the start of World War I, World War II,
Yes.
finish of World War I and World War II. And there was 2 finishes, victory in Europe. And victory in the Pacific.
But you know the sad thing, Colin? We have learnt nothing.
Look, it's funny.
From
isn't
World
it?
War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, now what's happening.
Maybe that's another topic for another
Yes.
day. I've heard some cynics talk about the lessons of the past are right there in front of our
They
face
are.
for us to understand and grab hold of and ensure that we don't make the mistakes of the past
I'm
again.
going
But
to
we're deleting those from our
we
education.
are. And what we're doing, it's a bit like modern socialists. When you say, well, countries of Eastern Europe, Russia tried it. Oh, but they didn't do it right.
Yes.
We will. So I think a lot of these warmongers today think, oh, we can do it differently.
All right, we've got 1 minute to go. A quick
Okay.
summary on no, and then we've got to run off to the local news.
All right. Well, no is a really important part of human behaviour, human learning, human language. So there's no place for modern, trendy ideals. We don't teach no. No is a part of life.
Absolutely. All right, David Ashton Lewis, thank you very much for your time.
I like the way you speed it up. All right. Colin Ivan Bileski, thank you very, very much.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4CRB.com.